The night Daniel Carter's life truly began falling apart was the same night he learned how heavy silence could be. Rain pressed against the cracked windows of his tiny apartment, the kind of rain that sounded like the world knocking and reminding him of everything he had lost. He sat on the edge of a worn-out sofa, one arm wrapped protectively around his sleeping daughter, Emma, while overdue bills lay scattered on the floor like accusations. He was a single father, exhausted, grieving, and barely surviving, and he had no idea that one quiet act of kindness would one day place the keys of a mansion into his trembling hands. If you believe that kindness still matters, that second chances can change lives, and that ordinary people can become miracles for one another, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Daniel had not planned on becoming a single dad. Life had chosen that path for him with a cruelty that still ached in his chest. His wife, Laura, had passed away suddenly from an undiagnosed heart condition, leaving him alone with a 3-year-old child and a mountain of responsibilities he had never imagined carrying by himself. He worked 2 jobs, one during the day at a delivery warehouse and another at night cleaning office buildings, and still it was never enough. Every morning he woke before sunrise, made Emma breakfast, braided her hair the best he could with his clumsy hands, and whispered promises he was not sure he could keep. He promised her safety, warmth, and a future brighter than the one he felt slipping away. One evening, after finishing a late shift, Daniel noticed a woman struggling at the edge of the parking lot near his apartment complex. She sat in a wheelchair beside a broken-down car, the hazard lights blinking weakly in the dark. Her posture was tense, her hands gripping the armrests as if she were bracing against more than just the cold night air. Daniel hesitated. He was tired, his feet ached, and Emma was waiting at home. But something in the stillness of that woman, the quiet dignity mixed with helplessness, pulled at him. He approached, offered help, and soon realized the car would not start at all. Her name was Margaret Hale. She was disabled after a spinal injury from years ago, and she lived alone. That night, Daniel pushed her wheelchair through the rain to her nearby home, a modest place that looked far too empty for someone who carried so much silence inside her. He did not ask for money or gratitude. He simply made sure she was safe, got her inside, and left with a polite nod, never imagining their paths would cross again. But they did. Over the next few months, Daniel would see Margaret often. Sometimes he helped her carry groceries, sometimes he fixed small things around her house after work, and sometimes he just made sure her wheelchair ramp was clear after a storm. He never talked much about his own struggles, and she never spoke in detail about her past. Their connection grew quietly, built on routine and unspoken understanding. Daniel never saw her as a burden, and Margaret never saw him as just a struggling single dad. They saw each other as human beings trying to survive. What Daniel did not know was that Margaret was watching him closely. She noticed the way he rushed home every night, the way his phone wallpaper was always Emma's smiling face, and the way his shoulders slumped under invisible weight. Margaret herself carried a story marked by loss and wealth, though Daniel never suspected it. Once, she had lived in a grand mansion on the edge of the city, inherited from a family that valued money more than love. After her accident, those same relatives slowly disappeared, leaving her with possessions but no people. The mansion became too large, too cold, and too full of memories that hurt to breathe around. She moved into the smaller home, choosing solitude over echoes. One winter evening, everything nearly fell apart for Daniel again. Emma became seriously ill, and the hospital bills threatened to drown him completely. He sold his old car, skipped meals, and slept less than ever. Margaret noticed his exhaustion and the dark circles under his eyes. One afternoon, she saw him sitting on the curb outside the apartment complex, head in his hands, trying to hold himself together before going upstairs to his daughter. Without making a scene, she placed a warm blanket around his shoulders and left him with a small envelope that contained just enough money to cover Emma's medication. Daniel tried to refuse, but she insisted quietly, reminding him that accepting help did not make him weak. Time passed, and Emma recovered. Daniel kept helping Margaret, never knowing how deeply his kindness was reshaping her heart. He treated her not as a disabled woman, not as a charity case, but as someone whose life still mattered. For Margaret, that changed everything. For the first time since her accident, she felt seen without pity and valued without condition. Then one morning, Margaret did not answer her door. Daniel felt a familiar knot of fear tighten in his chest. He called for help, and she was taken to the hospital. Her condition was serious, and the doctors spoke in careful, measured tones. Daniel visited whenever he could, bringing Emma along, who would draw pictures and leave them on the bedside table. Margaret watched the little girl with soft eyes, feeling something warm and painful bloom inside her. She saw in Emma the childhood she never had and in Daniel the family she had lost. Weeks later, Margaret was discharged, but she was weaker. One afternoon, she asked Daniel to come by her house. She looked calm, almost peaceful, as if she had already made peace with something much larger than herself. She handed him a small, heavy set of keys without explanation. Daniel was confused, assuming they were for her house, maybe asking him to help sell it or manage something while she rested. She only smiled gently and told him that sometimes life returns what we give, but in ways we never expect. Margaret passed away quietly a few days later. Daniel attended the small funeral with Emma holding his hand. He felt grief, but also gratitude for having known her. A week later, he received a letter from a lawyer that made his hands shake so badly he had to sit down. Margaret Hale had left him her mansion, the one she had abandoned years ago, along with enough savings to ensure Emma's future. The keys she had given him were not symbolic. They were real. When Daniel first stood in front of the mansion, he felt like an intruder in someone else's dream. The iron gates opened slowly, revealing a house bathed in afternoon light, grand yet silent. He walked through rooms filled with echoes of a life Margaret had once lived, and he understood then what she had truly given him. Not just wealth, but a chance. A chance to stop surviving and start living. A chance to give Emma the stability he had promised her on those hardest nights. Daniel did not become rich overnight in his heart. He remained the same man who helped without asking, who worked hard, and who believed kindness was not a transaction. He used part of the inheritance to create a small foundation in Margaret's name, supporting disabled individuals who had been forgotten the way she once had been. The mansion became a home filled with laughter, not loneliness, and its doors were always open. Years later, Daniel would sit on the porch watching Emma run across the lawn, her laughter echoing freely, and he would think of Margaret. He would think of that rainy night, the broken-down car, and the simple choice to stop and help. He understood then that kindness is never wasted, even when it feels invisible. Sometimes it grows quietly, waiting for the right moment to return as something unimaginably beautiful. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can reach the people who need them most. Before this story ends, we ask you to leave a comment and tell us what part of this journey moved you the most, because your words help keep these stories alive. Daniel Carter never saw himself as a hero, and Margaret Hale never wanted to be remembered for her wealth. Their lives crossed not because of fate alone, but because one tired single father chose compassion over convenience. And in that choice, two broken lives quietly healed, proving that the richest gifts are not always wrapped in gold, but in humanity.